Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome to this new playlist series on my YouTube channel. In this playlist, I'm going to endeavor to go over each and every letter between Aleister Crowley and his student Anne Mackey from Magick Without Tears. That's right. Just like my playlist from Liber Alba Book 4, I'm going to go over one letter per video, and that includes the intro letters, of which today we will start with letter A. So I apologize for any background noise and disruptions in audio. I have an emergency with a friend. He's about to undergo back surgery, and last moment yesterday he asked me if I could escort him to a doctor's appointment, and yeah, I totally agreed. He's a very close friend of mine. So I'm in Jamaica, Queens at Maple Grove Cemetery. So it's near Briarwood, just south of Kew Gardens. So if you hear any trucks or any machinery, it's just workers driving by. It's a beautiful sunny day, and it's an otherwise pretty peaceful place, but there are people. I'm right by a street, so people are walking by. You probably hear. Just try to ignore that. I apologize. I want to get this video started. So with that, let's continue. Note that from Magick Without Tears, I went over letters E and the opening of letter F, and that was pertaining to the magical motto. So you'll find a link in the description below to the magical motto video. So I'm going to be skipping that in the future. There are over 80 letters written between Crowley and Mackey in 1943, around the time he was publishing the Thoth Tarot. Basically, Mackey would ask questions by letter, and Crowley would write back, and so all of his responses are what were collected, and I believe it was 1954. They were published either by Carl Germer or Israel Regardie as Magick Without Tears in a very limited hardcover edition. Since there's been 2 or 3 other publications of Magick Without Tears, the paperback, it's got a red cover paperback, that's the most common. It's out of print, but you can find copies. I've not recently, but in the past, I've seen them floating around for $80. And you could even find that edition in hardcover for usually about $100 to $120. They could go up to $400 or $500, sometimes more, depending on the condition. With that introduction out of the way, let's begin. So letter A begins, quote, Cara Sora, C-A-R-A, Cara Sora, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, end quote. First off, let's address that introduction because it's used in every letter. Cara means either dear, or sometimes it's used as beloved. So beloved sister, Cara Sora. Even in today's AA lineages, as far as I'm aware, all lineages still use this formal address at the beginning of their letters from students or superiors writing official correspondences, whether email or written letters. It's always customary then to write, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Then to end the letter, love is the law, love under will, and below that sign your name. Either ex lux, meaning from the light or of the light, right? Or sincerely, or however you'd like, and then your magical motto. And usually just either the value by gematria of your magical motto, or frater, sorer, and then the initial of your motto. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and love is the law, love under will, are the most probably important verses from Liber L. We've talked about this many times, so I'll skip over what it means to do your will and to do nothing else, just not doing what you want. I'm sure you know that. This is not 101. I try to keep my videos at least 201 level or beyond. I really try to avoid 101. So there's plenty written about do what thou wilt. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Alternatively, 93 is the value of by gematria of the lema in Greek, and also agape equals 93. So love is the law, love under will. There's 3 93s, so you'll see 93 at the top and 93 space 93/93. So it's just abbreviating those formal addresses, and I've said this in my video, what is 93, link in the description below. It is stating emphatically when you use this to address somebody, either in person or by letter, that you're saying, I am here to do my will, and wherever I go, I will do that and nothing else. Further, by saying my intent, I lay myself bare before you, as I am, with no lies or deceit. Lastly, by writing this, I challenge you to be your truest self and do your will and only your will. By using the same intro and outro, you agree and accept this challenge, period. To continue letter A, quote, I was very glad to gather from your conversation yesterday afternoon that you have serious intention of taking up the great work in the proper spirit, end quote. What is the great work? In Crowley's view, first off, it is going through initiations of AA. Well, what does that entail? Well, like in alchemy, turning lead into gold. The great work is to turn oneself from a base inhabitant of the earth, a common layman, into a master and beyond. To come into union with the source, what we vulgarly call the light or God. In AA, Liber 61 is addressed to probationers when they sign their probation oath and task. Liber 61 outlines what the great work is, what the White Brotherhood is, the Great White Brotherhood. So you should read Liber 61 for more information about the introduction to the great work. Doing the great work in an AA system, for example, is marked by two major milestones and 10 grades, corresponding with the 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. Firstly, the first major milestone is to attain knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. The second milestone is to cross the abyss. One must remove all defects, destroy their ego, give up their individuality, and become a God incarnate, or become God incarnate, to be full of that light, absolutely, and allow that light to work through you, radiating from the center of your being outward. In my view, to attain knowledge and conversation, I use the metaphor of a pipeline. So we're born, and through circumstance, social indoctrination, a bunch of mundane factors, that pipe directly between, you ever hear like children are very intuitive? They see things that adults don't psychically. It's a very common trope and idea. Well, children, they have that pipeline, in my view, cleared. There's no blockage between them and God. So their psychic senses are much more open as children. They haven't been told fairies aren't real. Those things are imagination. They're very susceptible. They're just trying to figure out what life is. They don't know anything yet. So that pipeline has not been gunked up by their peers and by adults that tell them what to believe and what not to believe, what is real and what is not real. As an adult, the more blockage that gets gunked up in that pipe blocks one from their HGA. So to get to that first milestone, you really have to clear out whatever's blocking you and create an open pipeline between you and the source. And that part of that is clearing the blockage between you and your HGA. I believe it's Phyllis Seckler that said, once you attain knowledge and conversation, you look back and you could see the hand of your holy guardian angel in everything that's ever happened, that you perceived, that you did, everything that was set up in order for you to meet your HGA. Its hand is ever visible in your life once you know how to look for it. So on top of these two major milestones, there's 10 grades in AA. Each one has specific work with the surrounding paths that connect to that Sephiroth that your grade is located in. And so you want to build the Tree of Life upwards from Malkuth to Kether. And so you do certain work in each grade. You have task lists that are corresponding with the energy and the highest and lowest aspects of the Sephiroth of your grade. Also, you want to work with the paths that touch that Sephiroth. And so you start to build like a framework, like a scaffolding, this Tree of Life in your body, and the paths support the other spheres on top. So you do work that corresponds with each path and each Sephiroth around and in that grade that you're in. And so that's what the great work is. You want to come into union with Kether. And these Sephiroth are already there. It's not like you're building them from nothing. They're there, but you're realizing them. You're activating them. You're cleaning those pipes, so to speak, in each Sephiroth. You're getting the gunk out so that those spheres can be vibrant and work through you completely, so that you're actualizing them. They're there, but you need to be able to know that they're there and what they do, and really attain to those greens. Make sure that they're unlocked and open. In short, that's the great work. Creating that tree of life within you and working through all of the yoga, magic, mysticism, all of that stuff. So there's 10 grades with very specific work, and you're going to do all of that work if you join AA or another system that works Golden Dawn style. That's the great work. Continued with the letter A, quote, "Your criticisms of previous experience in the course of your adventures appeared to be singularly sane and just. As I promised, I am writing this letter to cover a few practical points which we had not time to discuss, and which in any case I think it better to arrange by correspondence." End quote. Note the words sane and just. I often meet people who seek spirituality to help them cure maladies, whether of circumstance or of the mind. That's all good and well, but when taking up magic, you need to be stable. The occult isn't going to fix mental illness. In fact, the occult is likely to exacerbate it. Doing foundational stuff, LBRPs, silent meditation, reading occult literature, philosophy, that's all good and well. But when taking up magic, you need to be stable, and sometimes that requires therapy for some people. Don't be afraid to get help. Make sure your foundation is stable, that you are physically, and like you'll even see in the tasks, being of sound body and mind, you take those oaths. So you need to be stable, you need to be of sound body and mind. You could do foundational stuff that's generally fine for most people. Know thyself, don't take this as a rule of thumb. You have to know yourself. If you're too unstable to even do LBRPs, get that help. Don't be afraid. There's a lot of taboo around mental illness and mental health treatment. Don't be afraid of it. Be stable, then take up the great work. If not, you're likely to drive yourself into bad situations or make bad situations worse. I've seen it firsthand with friends who have PTSD or other severe bipolar, borderline, undiagnosed mental illness. It's devastating, and people are afraid to tell their superiors that that's going on, and you need to be completely honest with the person overseeing your work, because if they don't know you have borderline or something severe psychosis, schizophrenia or something, they'll give you work based on the fact they think you're stable, and if you're hiding it, they don't know, and you're likely to start hallucinating or doing things that make yourself more unstable and can get very dangerous on a psychological level. Crowley stated above that there were things that he and Mackie had not had time to talk over the last they had met. He lists 4 points. I'm going to skip 3 and 4. They pertain to a certain order that it doesn't add anything to the conversation, so I'm just going to do points 1 and 2. Quote, point 1. "It is of the first importance that you should understand my personal position. It is not actually wrong to regard me as a teacher, but it is certainly liable to mislead. Fellow student, or, if you like, fellow sufferer, seems a more appropriate definition." End quote. Every Thelemite, no matter what grade, no matter how long they've practiced, nor where they are in the tree or what system they're part of, no matter if they're solitary or if they have a teacher, even if they're your teacher directly or just a friend that's helping you that's been doing this longer, everyone is a student in Thelema. Crowley half-jokingly said fellow sufferer is a better term. Now, I like that. This is aligned, in my opinion, with Buddhist ideology, that existence is suffering, everything is sorrow. Regardless, that the Book of the Law states, quote, "Existence is pure joy," end quote. To take up the great work is to deal with your karma, and in Confessions, Crowley describes taking initiation as kicking a hornet's nest. Every force in the universe will attempt to make you turn back. Your ego is going to act out. Circumstances will try you in order to determine whether or not you will swerve or whether you will persevere. Higher grades are not much better than the lower grades in this terms. As long as you're alive and dealing with the great work, you're going to have trials and tribulations at one point or another. Some initiations, like the journey through the abyss, may very well take everything from you. You must follow your course regardless. And all the way, at the end, not only do you realize that you've only just arrived at the beginning, but you come face to face with your ignorance and the knowledge that you can never know God. Despite that, for us who are practicing, it is what we know we must do. And this is not a pity party. Everyone will have to deal with these things, so the sooner the better. Whether you're initiated or not, you're going to deal with the trials and tribulations of life. It's good for you being here and being determined to take your first steps forward, or to continue taking steps if you've taken your first steps. There is also much joy and love along the way, so not everything is sorrow and suffering. We get community, we have feast days, and if you could get past the vision of sorrow, you can see, I believe it's attributed to Chakma in my opinion, that existence is pure joy, that everything is the interplay of Nuit and Hadid, all is the cosmic dance of Pan, and in that chaos, in that insanity, in that raving and ripping and ranting, like it says in the hymn to Pan, there is joy. We trudge on, quote, "The climax of my life," said Crowley, "was what is known as the chiral working, described in the minutest of detail in the Equinox of the Gods. At that time, most of the Book of the Law was completely unintelligible to me, and a good deal of it, especially the 3rd chapter, extremely antipathetic, meaning he had an aversion to it," end quote. At the time of the writing of El, in 1904, Crowley was very into Buddhism, and due to the schism of the Golden Dawn, Crowley had been getting more and more into Asian studies of religion, such as Taoism, Hinduism, yoga, etc. And he had been on a break from magic generally. But it was on his honeymoon that he did the invocation of the Bornless One in the pyramids of Giza with his then very new wife, in order to show her the sylphs, as he describes. To say that was the pinnacle of his work, which led to the writing of the Book of the Law, may very well be the truth, but also not the truth. He did many great things for his own advancement after, as well as starting AA 5 years after the writing of the Book of the Law, not to mention creating his Thoth Tarot, publishing the Equinox, volumes 1 through 4, a slew of other books and articles and teachings and lectures and orders and leading groups. But Liber El came to be the foundation of almost all of that, and would basically pave the way for many generations to come to follow the Lima, to do their wills. Continuing with letter A, quote, "I fought against this book for years, but it proved irresistible. I do not think I am boasting unfairly when I say that my personal researches have been the study of the subject of magic and mysticism in general, especially my integration of the various thought systems of the world, notably the identification of the system of the Yi King with that of the Kabbalah. But I do assure you that the whole of my life's work, were it multiplied 1,000-fold, would not be worth 1/10 or 10th of the value of a single verse of the Book of the Law. I think you should have a copy of the Equinox of the Gods, and make the Book of the Law your constant study. Such value as my own work may possess for you should amount to no more than an aid to the interpretation of this book," end quote. In my view, everyone should study the Book of the Law. After years of practice and countless thousands of other books under my belt, Liber El really and truly only gets more beautiful as time has gone on. Say what you will, think what you will about the small little comment in the back of the 3rd chapter. Study the Book of the Law. How about that? That's all I'll say about it. The more I've read it, the more I've studied it, in conjunction with Crowley's other books, the Book of the Law has only gotten much more precious. Like he describes, first it's silver, then it's gold, then it's precious drops of water in the desert, sparks of fire raining upon thee. It's not that I'm opposed to talking directly about the contents of the Book of the Law, nor speculating on specific verses, but I try to avoid influencing anyone by accident on how they should interpret its passages. I try to respect that value of the Lima, that each individual should discover the mysteries of El for themselves. If I do comment upon verses from it, I try not to do it in subtle ways. I always try to be very direct and say, hey, this is my opinion on this verse, as I don't want to plant unconscious seeds or interpretations in anyone's mind by accident. So Again, study it and its comments by Crowley. Eshelman has a wonderful comment, link in the description below. I think it's the limastas.com or org. Point 2, quote, "It may be that later on you will want a copy of 8 lectures on yoga, so I am putting a copy aside for you in case you should want it," end quote. Also known as Yoga for Yellow Bellies, I highly recommend 8 lectures on yoga. It was based on 8 spoken lectures that Crowley had given in person, and I draw off of 8 lectures on yoga quite a bit in many of my Liber Alba Part 1 playlist videos about yoga and mysticism. In this book, 8 lectures on yoga, is one of my favorite quotes by Crowley. Quote, "Sit still, stop thinking, shut up, and get out," end quote. Moving on past points 3 and 4, Crowley goes on to write, quote, "Now, there is really one important matter, the only thing besides the Book of the Law which is in the forefront of the battle. As I told you yesterday, the first essential is the dedication of all that one is and all that one has to the great work, without reservation of any sort. This must be kept constantly in mind. The way to do this is to practice Liber Resh Vel Helios, sub figura 200. The important thing is not to forget to do it," end quote. I have a video about Resh, link in the description. The important thing Crowley is noting is that by doing such practices that are performed periodically day in and day out, you end up beating your mind into remembering constantly that you are performing the great work, which is actually quite easy to be distracted from, and then you lose focus upon it. Let me quote something from 8 lectures on yoga. Quote, "There should be, there must be, a definite routine of acts calculated to remind the student of the great work. Every student should make a point of saluting the sun in the manner recommended in Liber Resh 4 times daily, and he shall salute the moon on her appearance with the mantra Gayatri. The best way is to say the mantra instantly when one sees the moon, to know whether the attention wavers, and to repeat the mantra until it does not waver at all. He should also practice assiduously Liber 3 Vel Jugorum. There is also a practice which I find very useful when walking in a Christian city, that of exercising with the prescribed outward and down sweep of the arm in the words Apopantos kakademanos towards any person in religious garb. All these practices assist concentration and also serve to keep one on the alert. They form an invaluable preliminary training for the colossal work of genuine concentration when it comes to be a question of the fine, growing constantly finer, movements of the mind," end quote. So that's very straightforward. Also add saying will before every meal that you eat. I feel like that works with the path of Shin, tooth, which chews the food that you're going to intake, turning it into spiritual energy for you to do the great work. So if you do these practices day in and day out, you end up constantly reminding yourself that I'm performing the great work by doing Resh, by doing Jagoram. You're doing these concentration exercises, forcing yourself to remember first and foremost that I am a magician, I am doing the great work, that is the purpose of my life, to come into union, to find yoga. The mantra Gayatri is actually another solar adoration. I had a conversation recently about why you would say solar adoration upon the first appearance of the moon. Well, this is just my speculations and opinions based on a conversation. So even though the mantra Gayatri is a solar adoration, the moon reflects the sun's light. So it's a way of worshiping the moon, giving a salutation to the light of the sun via the medium of the moon. The Lima is a solar phallic philosophy, religion, system, like it is a system. It's solar phallic. So even in the feminine, the clitoris is the phallus, it's the female phallus. So there's still that solar aspect of the moon reflecting the light of the sun. The moon's radiance is the light of the sun being bounced off of it. So I could see why you would say solar adoration. He's trying to attune people to the solar phallic current. I've never spoken about saying will. I'll make a short video on how to do will. I'm going to skip over that. Letter A continues, quote, "It is impossible to exaggerate the importance of performing these small ceremonies regularly and being as nearly accurate as possible with regard to the times. You must not mind stopping in the middle of a crowded thoroughfare, lorries or no lorries. A lorry is a English small pickup truck sort of truck. A lorry. Lorries or no lorries, and saying the adorations. And you must not mind snubbing your guest or your host if he or she should prove ignorant of his or her share of the dialogue of saying will. It is perhaps because these matters are so petty and trivial in appearance that they afford so excellent a training. They teach you concentration, mindfulness, moral and social courage, and a host of other virtues." End quote. So we're almost done now. Crowley mentions to Mackie the importance of the magical record, beginning by writing down your entire life on the first page from birth up to the present. I have a video on the magical diary, link in description. Crowley then mentions to Mackie Liber D sharp. I should do an entire video on D sharp. Basically, he's referring to a specific part of it where there's a practice in the text of thinking backwards and visualizing backwards and meditating upon events backwards, which eventually leads to visions of previous lives. And so I'll talk about that at another time perhaps. Here we reach the final paragraph. Quote, "As it is difficult for you to come to town except at rare and irregular intervals, may I suggest a plan which has previously proved very useful, and that is a weekly letter. Eliphas Levi did this with Baron Spedalieri, and the correspondence is one of the most interesting of his works. You ask such questions as you wish to have answered, and I answer them to the best of my ability. I, of course, add spontaneous remarks which may be elicited by my observations on your progress and the perusal of your magical diary. This, of course, should be written on one side of the paper only so that the opposite page is free for comments, and an arrangement should be made for it to be inspected at regular intervals. Love is the law, love under will, for eternally, 666. End quote. Again, checking records is a AA teacher job. Basically, depending on how much you're writing and how much you're practicing, should determine how often you end up sending your record to your superior. When I was a probationer in the outer college lineage, I was sending every month, or 1 to 3 months, because it varied. But for my year of probation, every time I'd hit 100 pages of practices and entries, 100 pages, 12 fonts, single spaced, I would send it to my superior. So I ended up sending about, in the first 12 months, close to 700 or 800 pages worth of practices and diary entries. And it wasn't, hey, I'm just feeling sad, so I need to write down what made me sad today. No, it was 800 pages of practices and the results, and try to be very systematic and brief because I was doing a whole lot of practices, put it that way. Every page could have up to 4 to 5 different practices and their results. So it depends on what you and your teacher work out. Here we're about to finish this first video. I'm certain most people listening are familiar with the above quote Eliphas Levi. He was a French occultist. He was initially going to become a Roman Catholic priest. However, he was drawn not only to science, but spiritual views, which were deemed somewhat heretical. The combination resulted in his expulsion from the seminary where he was studying, pretty much like a week before he was about to swear his vows into priesthood. The above quote also mentioned a correspondence between Levi and Baron Spedalieri. I had to look him up. He was an Italian priest and theologian, and from what little I could find, basically Wikipedia about the man, he held moderate political views. He was more drawn towards Gnostic teachings and philosophy, such as Thomas Aquinas, probably St. Francis, and opposed to mainstream views of society such that royalty was above the church, or at least sovereign from the church. He also opposed René Descartes' dualism, and that idea of dualism was that the body and mind are of one realm and the spirit inhabiting the body is of another realm. Similar but different to Platonic dualism. So this leads me to assume that Spedalieri must have been more inclined to think that everything is God, or at least that the body, mind, and spirit all exist simultaneously here and now. It was not a different plane, and it was not dualistic. It was probably more monism, I guess you would say. And this is just an assumption, so take that with a grain of salt. Now with that, This ends the first of 9 intro letters, minus the 1.5. So we have 7.5 to go. There's a lot in these letters that address and set up the actual chapters and discussions that we're going to have later on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to taking this journey with you all. Love is the law, love under will. I will see you all in the next one. Peace.